Hello and welcome to the PC Gamer Podcast. I'm your host, Graham Smith, and I'm joined in the studio today by two fine young cannibals. Chris Thurston.
Hello. Used to be a vegetarian, but...
and Martin Davies.
Hiya. I do love a meat baby.
Me too. What's your favourite 80s pop band? UK British pop band?
Oh, The Police.
The Police, okay.
Yeah.
Chris?
Maybe the Smiths.
See, I was thinking more kind of...
Blondie, technically late 70s. If Blondie can count as 80s, then Blondie.
Well, you all both went for legitimate choices. I was thinking, more, Wham levels.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. No.
Human League?
Yeah, that's pretty good. We'll go with that.
Flight
And we'll-
Seagull. Yeah.
Duran,
Yeah.
and, so many memories.
Yeah, I don't have that many memories of that, because I was
Me neither.
born in 1987. So.
Let's talk about video games, though.
Okay, yeah.
Martin, what have you been playing recently?
I've been playing Kentucky Route Zero, which is a guided narrative game. Looks a bit like an adventure game, but it isn't an adventure game.
A guided narrative game.
Yeah,
Did
like...
you create a new genre?
I've read it somewhere, so somebody else created it already. It's a bit like, like Dear Esther and things like that. It seems to be an emerging genre.
Do you mean games in which you might be in a coma?
Yeah, there seem to be quite a few of those. There's I think one's called Coma. But yeah, when
That one does give it away.
Putting together our list of games of 2013, the adventure game category just seems to have swelled massively, and it's largely in part due to
Germany?
No, due to Kickstarter and all of the terrible old school adventure games, point and click games that seem to be resurfacing like a stubborn turd bobbing back to the surface of gamingdom. But there's also a large number of more interesting looking games, which are essentially narrative experience games. I don't know, like a guided narrative game. So games where you don't really make choices and you don't necessarily you don't fight through puzzles or do any of the kind of things you usually do in games. You're just guided through this world and you kind of absorb it.
Experiences. Curated experiences.
Yes, like Dear Esther, which is, but Kentucky Route Zero isn't a first-person game, unlike many of them. It's a side-on game drawn in this really gorgeous-looking vector art style, and it's set in a nighttime Kentucky, and you go on this mysterious journey, and there's lots of stuff that doesn't really make sense in it. There's just
That means it's deep.
oh yeah,
So odd then.
If it's
well philosophical. Yeah, I would say it is beautiful, and it's very evocative, and it does create a certain mood. But I say I found it quite frustrating. It's just an unending torrent of non sequiturs, basically, and that's that has its place. But I tend to think that magic realism, as that is what it is being touted as, works as a kind of contrast to a narrative. So you have a narrative, and then something crazy and unexpected happens, and you think, "Oh, this has really subverted my idea of the narrative reality."
You might yell.
But this is just it's just nothing. There's no kind of coherent thread through it. So just one thing happens after another, and it ends up feeling slightly aimless, like somebody trying to narrate their dream to you. And you know how boring it is when people tell you about their dreams. Fucking boring is the answer to that
that's
question.
very boring.
Didn't we start the last podcast by talking at length about Tom's dream?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't make it through that one.
I had a really, really meta moment in a dream, like a night ago or 2 nights ago, where I was having a conversation with someone in the dream, and I was kind of incoherent. I couldn't express myself properly. And then in the dream, I apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, but I'm asleep in a different reality." I was like, whoa. And then I blew my own mind and woke up. Sorry, you were saying.
You were saying how you hate it when people tell you
Yes,
their dream.
yeah.
Anyway, I just illustrate that point. There you go.
Unfathomably boring.
No, it's fathomable.
Oh yes, yeah, it is. It's because there's nothing for you to kind of hook any kind of narrative investment on, because nothing means anything, because one thing can turn into another, and what's the point? I mean, I can come up with a series of completely unconnected images if I like. I don't need somebody else to do that for me. But I'm being overly harsh. Like Kentucky Route Zero does some really nice things as well. So there's a moment in it, if you don't mind, where it asks you to piece together a poem out of dialogue options. A poem, of course, it's an
Yeah.
indie game, isn't it? Each of the verses that you can stick together does actually sound like a poem. It has it has a very nice rhythm to it. It's very kind of sonorous, and it'd be hard to say that there's a definitive meaning which changes depending on the structure of it, but it does feel like all of the options create legitimate poems, and it is quite interesting for you to be able to, rather than determining the fate of any characters or make those kind of usual choices you make in video games, to actually just be describing the inner life of a character or describing these things which don't usually have any kind of impact on a game. Interesting. It's pretentious.
It's interesting how I mean, there's kind of been an indie boom over the last few years, but it's interesting how quickly we've become scornful and cynical of these tropes.
I was always scornful and cynical.
Well, yeah, but just that there are definite indie arty bullshit tropes that turn in game after game of really heavy-handed metaphors and it's all a dream. I mean, my favorite game set inside a coma is Driver San Francisco.
Oh yeah, that's great because you smash into lots of cars during that dream. It's the best kind of dream.
Yep.
Would you mind someone telling you that dream?
No, that would be okay.
Okay.
That'd be okay.
Do you think these guided experiences are games?
Oh God, I hate this question because I've argued at length. I've argued at length with people about this. I have a kind of fairly fatalistic view of the way that language develops.
Or broader?
I have a fairly fatalistic view, but also I mean, like Tad Kelly. I don't know if you're aware of. I think that's how you pronounce his first name.
Ty.
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know who this person is. So.
He's a very nice man, and he writes a lot about games. I think he does a game consultancy service, and he's very, very bright. And he comes up with lots of these kind of new terms to describe games. I forget all of them now, and that is kind of the flaw of his approach. Is that he's thinking of these very high-minded things and finding new ways to define them, which haven't been really used in language before. But actually, that's not how language works. Language comes out of communal understanding. And when people describe these things as games, it's because that's convenient in every single way to them to describe it as games, because it's made by people who otherwise make games, it's sold on platforms which otherwise sell games, and it's played by people who otherwise play games, to all intents and purposes.
Of course it's a fucking game. There's no doubt or question, or there shouldn't be. Just because it's a strange experience you haven't had before in a game, or there aren't points or obvious mechanics, doesn't make it any less of what we would think of as being a video game.
I think Tad Ty, nameless Colonel Kelly, Mr. Kelly would suggest that there is a necessity to have certain features shared amongst things that you call a game. But I think it's too late. You can't redefine it now. That horse has already bolted well out of the terminology door.
I think it's fine to come up with specific
Not my
terms.
Samantha Barn.
I have some sympathy with people who try to come up with new terms to describe new things, but that doesn't mean that those terms can't go also under the umbrella of game. And I do think sometimes language happens from a kind of top-down way, and that a critic will use a word to describe something, say punk, will use the word punk to describe a certain type of music, and then that catches on, because if you've got people who are influential enough, they can do that. But you got to be very influential, and no one really in the game sphere is.
Well, yeah, and I think the comparison to make is comics, the word comics. Given that what we consider to be comics aren't by no means necessarily funny anymore. Like they're established as light entertainment comedy format, and
we do have graphic novel, I suppose,
but only used by Waterstones.
Yeah, and graphic novel was a very self-conscious, deliberate introduction of that term of this is going to be growing up, and we're going to start using this. And it's not caught on nearly as much as Vertigo would have inaccurate.
And would you call something like Chris Ware's, books / jigsaw pieces / building sets,
3D construction sets?
They're fucking great. But are they comics?
Yeah, but you stick with the words you've got. I think comics is still a perfectly good word for that, and it's broadly understood enough that your communicative aims are met by using that word.
Yeah, you just want a term which will tell you which aisle to go to in a virtual or real supermarket. You know, that's what you, because the terms are there to serve people who are trying to look for this shit. You know.
Yep. That's
So
how language communities work.
welcome to the English Literature Student Podcast.
Yeah, indeed.
sorry
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Talking about our dreams, talking about some metaphors,
We got
talking about
poetry.
semantics.
Poetry. Did you Kentucky Route Zero is by, I haven't played it yet, but it's by Jake Elliott, I think.
Cardboard Computer.
Cardboard Computer.
Yeah.
Did you play his previous thing?
I have not.
House in California.
No.
Because that's really interesting as a counterpoint, because it's a kind of an adventure game in that it has like a scumbar style set of nouns and verbs and things you can do to different objects in the environment, but they change every time you move into a new area and become absurd. And you're still looking for use basically, but what use has changed to, sing or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's sort of all about shifting language and kind of trying to sort of, I guess, create your own meaning through it. A bit like you were saying about assembling poetry and all still managing to sound like poetry regardless of the path you take through it. It's sort of undirected, sort of very safe creativity. I think that's the point where it becomes a game. Because I was thinking about this with his previous stuff as well, where it's basically, I think games like that are to actual writing or literature what Rock Band is to actual musicianship, right? It's taking something that's incredibly complicated and then taking almost all of the complex technical stuff away, giving you different meanings represented as literally red, blue, green, and yellow, and then allowing you to mash the plastic buttons until a poem happens or whatever. Mm. And that's the way in which it's a game. It's kind of fulfilling in the same way. So make your own art adventure. That's how I would argue it's a game.
Good arguing. What have you been playing, Chris?
I'm playing Dark Souls.
That's a game.
It is a game. And I know I'm kind of really late to this party, in that it came out on console over a year ago and PC 6 months ago now. I don't remember exactly how long.
Something like that.
I picked it up in the Steam sale and I've been meaning to play it, and I was put off it by the process that happens with everything I get put off, which is everyone telling me it's brilliant, and gushing about it endlessly, and these sort of like, people basically gathering on Twitter to hold each other and remind each other, wait, wasn't that wonderful? And I worried that actually it would be kind of lost to me in the same way that I always felt Minecraft was lost to me. That
it becomes someone else's experience.
Yeah.
And there's also a kind of recommendation resentment of people. If people, fuck off, I've got enough in my life to get through without you adding to it with your worldly drama series.
Yeah, exactly. And like the idea that, everyone goes into Minecraft and does the same couple of things. And like, wow, it was amazing. My first night was so scary. And every single person has that experience. So that when you finally go into it, you're like, oh man, it's the first night. And then you hold yourself up into a wall and you look at a black screen for ages and some of the mood is gone because the ground has been flooded before you. I was worried the Dark Souls would be like that. But actually it's kind of clever in the way that it anticipates that. And I gave myself some rules. Like, I'm not going to use any of the kind of absolutely perfect sources of information, like wikis and things. I'll only use the in-game chat, because it's an RPG where, a hard action RPG where you can leave messages on the walls for the players based on a word set and certain sentence constructions. So you're kind of limited, like secret left or something. And obviously people lie sometimes. Like almost every cliff in the game is now plastered with messages saying, try jumping. And these messages are really cool because they're cryptic enough that you don't feel like you're spoiling the game for yourself. But also the game takes into account that those messages will exist, and that allows it to be more adventurous in the way it lays out levels and things. So that it's sort of, there might be a shopkeeper who's super important, hidden behind, you have to smash some boxes and find a little secret staircase and things. And, that area now, there's lots of like, try smashing and little messages like that.
Is the limitation of its syntax a good thing?
Yes. Yes, I think it is, because I think it's clever how you can express pretty much everything you need to express. But also I think the clumsiness of the way that wording comes across, that ambiguity is really important. Like if you read a wiki and it tells you this guy spawned here, he has a chance he has 15% chance to drop this, then there is no magic left in that game at all, right? It becomes like in an MMO, I think the weakest point that MMOs can reach is when you're not playing the micro scale game at all. You're only playing the macro. The macro being, I want this dragon sword of plus 10 brilliantness. And to get that, I have to kill this one guy 1,000 times. And so the actual like minute to minute action you're doing is in service of the long term goal, and the only fun you're having is the long term, not the short term. Dark Souls, and that ambiguity and the fact that you're constantly reading messages, and also every time you connect, it'll the messages it'll pull from elsewhere in the world will be different. And you sometimes see ghosts of other players dying. You'll see a bloodstain on the floor and you can touch it and you'll see that someone else's last moments, and that can give you clues and stuff. But that stuff is all pulled, presumably kind of at random from the vast amount of online data available. So you don't see everything everyone's ever written.
Yeah.
And that means that even when you re-enter an area, the words will change and things. And I think that constant shifting, like that's so essential. So the only other way I'm getting information when I get really stuck is Rich. I will ask Rich because I trust Rich to think he's correct, but there's still a level of ambiguity about the advice he'll give me.
He's also notoriously dishonest. So
yeah, yeah, what a scoundrel. But so I played about sort of 5-6 hours of it and enjoying it and getting on sort of fine. And I like the combat; it's really sort of kinetic and kind of and hard, but sort of rewarding. The big mechanic is if you die, you lose all the currency, the souls you were holding, and all of your humanity, which is a different stat, at the point where you died. And then if you can go and get it back, you get it all back. If you die on the way to get it back, you've lost it. It's gone. And so that's almost like mini roguelike mechanic that doesn't stop the game. But the moment that it really, really clicked for me over the weekend, the story I wanted to tell, was getting invaded for the first time. So in Dark Souls, you can exist in one of two states. You're either like a shambling corpse zombie person. The story is all about how you're already dead and kind of roaming this sort of ruin. And when you're in that mode, it's almost offline mode. You know, most of the game still as it is. You still see the text, and you can leave text, but you can't, interact with other players too much. And then if you become human, you have a higher chance to find rare loot and stuff, and that's the reason why you should want to do it. But you can also summon other players into your reality to help you, so that's the co-op, or invade other players to kill them and take their humanity. And that leads into a kind of like global karma system, almost like MMO-style griefing and stuff. And in areas that are notorious to it, you'll see warnings on the floors like "Beware of grief," which is quite sort of nice little people. Because one of the nouns, they're using the Western phrase "grief" as in to grief someone, but taking the words from this Japanese game to kind of warn against that. Again, it's a nice way that the restricted semantics kind of help it. But anyway, so I was just about to do a boss that's on the rooftop. It's the gargoyle boss by the first bell tower. If you've played Dark Souls, people will know where that is. And before you walk out onto this rooftop to fight the boss, you stand on this kind of very narrow 3 foot by 6 foot stone sort of ledge that you've climbed up a ladder to get to. And you climb up there and you go out a door. And then on that ledge, I noticed that there was a summoning sign for an NPC. Sometimes you can summon NPCs into your own world if you're human. If you've previously helped them, they can come and help you with the boss fight. And there's this NPC who's a chubby Knight of the Sun who throws lightning bolts. So I clicked on his sign to summon him, and I'd never done this before. So I clicked on the summoning sign, and I'm like, oh, cool. Then as I clicked on the summoning sign, a massive glowing red spectre appeared behind me. And I thought, that doesn't look like the guy I just summoned. And also, I did know that if players that invade your realm they have the same model that they normally would, but they're just like glowing red specters. So I was like, this is potentially bad. And then as I got just that far into the thought, a big thing flashed up on the screen saying like, you have been invaded. And normally I think when this happens, they don't necessarily spawn behind you, at a point. But this guy literally spawned like right next to me, but also but between me and him was the summoning sign for the guy I had just clicked to summon. So I literally freaked out and jumped backwards and and this guy's like, a huge guy with a spiky helmet that makes him look like the Statue of Liberty, wearing a robe, holding a katana and this massive shield. And I'm fucked. At which point, the knight that I had summoned appears between me and the other guy, because that summon finishes. And he turns, and the knight just turns and hits him immediately, and then throws a lightning bolt at him, and the guy's like fighting him. And the guy reaches past the knight and manages to hit me, and I'm almost, it's 2 hits and I'm dead, kind of against this high-level player. At which point the friendly knight goes for him again, and they both fall off the ladder and plummet down to the floor below. Both survive the fall, because there's not a lot of fall damage in Dark Souls. But I'm just watching from above, like, oh god, like egging on Solaire, the fat Sun Knight guy who's now fighting for me, this random player. And I was watching this happen, and I realised that my guy had a lot of health, but the guy could probably beat him. And one of the things that Dark Souls teaches you to do really, really early on to help beat a boss is a drop attack, which is where you drop and hold down the attack button, does huge amounts of damage. And so I'm just looking and edging along this ledge, like, if I can pull this off, without killing my own guy. And I just sort of just left into the abyss and just held down the attack button and kind of prayed. And I hit him just as he was dropped his shield to attack the guy I was with, and took him down to like 5% health. Like, just wrecked him. And it was this, yes! And then he sort of turns to me, looks at me and tries to hit me, and I block it, and then he just runs. Like, and he starts pelting it back out, trying to get out of my reality at this point. And so I just like chasing him through the corridors of this abbey, this crumbling abbey, with my fat, glowing, golden knight guy chasing behind me. And by this point, I've healed myself, and I'm just legging it after this guy because he can't heal in my reality. It's one of the weaknesses. If you invade someone, you can't use your healing flask to get your health back. There's other ways of doing it, but... And then I kind of cornered him in a corner, and he puts sort of parry and block back and forth, but I only need to hit him once. And then I did this sort of like diving power attack over his shield and killed him. And then he kind of crumbled, and I got his humanity, and I felt like a king. And I did like the bow emote and everything. And then I got a message, and it uses Games for Windows Live, which is a good warning, which is a dreadful piece of abominable software. But I got a message, Games for Windows Live message from the guy, because obviously he could see my game tag, sent me a message saying, you know, well done. Good luck with the gargoyles. And I was like, "Oh!" And he was like, "I'm sorry, I freaked out. This is the first time this happened to me." And he's like, "No, it's okay. Everyone, it's scary the first time. You'll be okay." And I'm like, "Oh!" Like, it was both really exciting, came completely out of nowhere, and ended with me kind of making an internet friend, which hasn't happened in games for ages. But that was the moment I was like, "Oh, I see why people get all misty-eyed about this game now."
I played it a little bit up until shortly after the first boss fight, where you kind of you do the first boss fight, you drop down and stab in the back, and then and then you go to the kind of next area, and there's like 6 different places you can go at that point. And I played a little bit past that point, and kind of bounced off it, and I'll come back to it later probably. But do you think that when people talk about it, they focus too much on how difficult it is, that they play Albert's challenge?
Yes. I mean, I don't, like, it's hard, but it's not that hard. Like, it's not impossible. It's not like, you know, it's not like Super Hexagon on the hardest setting, oh god, you know, you can't even see, you know, until you've been playing loads of that game, you can't even see the pattern by which you could possibly even survive. It's not that, you know, punishing. Like, I got a tip from Rich that has made it a little bit easier for me, because he told me how to get a secret sword early on, which is it's designed that new players can get it. Like, it's just a secret, and that's helped quite a bit. But also, I've learned loads of patterns. Like, you know, I think if you play attentively, and like the hard things are when you convince yourself that you're capable of going into an area you're not ready for yet, and you kind of keep grinding against it, and then almost always that means that you're missing an area that you can survive in, that you'd more advantageously go to, and so that's, you know, one thing. But like a lot of it is just learning, and I spent so much time doing that in games recently that once you've learned that, like, I felt like I had real trouble fighting a guy with a big 200 sword, just like a regular human, but in this particular area that I had unlocked, he's a ghost, but whatever. But the reason that I was getting killed is that one of his attacks was a big horizontal swipe that left him, he paused afterwards, and I could hit him then. And then his other attack was a vertical sweep down to the ground that then, after a pause that was always slightly longer than I thought it was going to be, comes back up as a counter. So every single time what would happen is I would attack him after the downward swipe, and then be disemboweled by his subsequent counter because I left myself open. And this kept happening until I was like, wait, no, if I play this really, really safe and just block and back off and dodge and wait for him to do the one attack I know I can get past, then eventually I'll whittle him down. And I ended up killing an enemy that I think was probably way too, based on the amount of stuff I got for killing him, probably not for my level to kill, because it was a huge boost.
Yeah.
But it was like, I feel like, yeah, it's hard if, you know, if you just looked at it in terms of numbers, like, yeah, okay, that guy can kill me in one hit, then yes, it's really, really difficult. But if it's cool that you can kind of game your way around those things, even if it's like the risk reward of kicking a high level enemy off a cliff, which will kill you no matter how high level you are, and then not getting the loot because you've kicked his body off a cliff. You get the XP essentially, but you don't get the stuff. So, you know, like,
I don't know. I think I just wonder how many people have been put off by the way it's been described as being this ultra challenging, ultra punishing, super inaccessible thing. And there's ways in which it's inaccessible because it's a little bit clunky.
Yeah.
And I, hope
controls are a bit.
Yeah, and that stuff annoyed me. But it's not as hard as many roguelikes are. You talked about the mini roguelike thing of if you die on the way back to your corpse or whatever, you lose your stuff. But it's not the same as playing NetHack with the same character for 12 hours and then dying and losing it completely and trying to get to the end of that game in a single life or anything like that.
I mean, I think, and because
so much of it seems to be it's about unlearning. It's like there's a bunch of stuff in Dark Souls which is counterintuitive if you've played the last 5 to 10 years of games development, where you've become used to, say, Bethesda RPGs, where no matter where you go at the start of the game, everything is leveled to your character and then levels up with you to give you a kind of gradual learning curve. And Dark Souls doesn't do that. It gives you 6 options for where to go at the start of the game.
Only one of them is valid.
Yeah. And all the others you'll just die, and you'll die 20 times before you realize, oh, hang on, this isn't what I've learned about games. Well,
like, it's clever. Like, the thing, like sort of the way it signposts things is really interesting. So that, like, there's an NPC early on who does tell you which of one of those 6 you should be going to. He says, this is the 2 things you need to do. This one's easier. There you go.
Yeah.
And then he starts to explain the humanity mechanic to you and how you earn humanity in order to become human and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. And as he's saying this, he says, well, you've got 2 options, really. You can find it out in the wilderness. That's going to take longer. Or you can kill people and take theirs. But I wouldn't encourage you to do that. And what the game's actually saying is, you can kill this guy if you like. He looks like a helper NPC, but you can kill him and take his humanity. And you can, if you want. And it's a huge boost, but it hurts you later on in other ways. And that's clever. And I think it's sort of like... the other thing is that it expects you to try and game it, which no games do anymore. Like, there's... The idea is that you will... enter in, like, there's a part of the game that's locked off unless you're willing to do what feels like cheat, which is you're facing a long corridor of enemies with a huge boss monster at the end that you can't possibly survive. You can barely survive if it goes for you. Like, if it goes for you, you're dead. But if you take off all your clothes, so you're super fast because your speed is determined by what you're wearing. If you're wearing loads of armor, you're slower. And you just sprint directly at it and then duck sideways into a doorway, you access the rest of the game. And you've bypassed that boss completely. You can go back in 40 hours' time when you're hugely resistant to all its attacks, and you can go back and kill it. But that's what it expects you to do. And then after you've done that, it unlocks a shortcut that means you don't have to do that again. Like, the respawn area then links directly to the part you found. So, it's wanting you to go, how do I solve this problem using the tools available to me?
Yeah.
Not, oh, well, I need to go and find the +10 sword. You know what I mean? It's not going to, like, you don't have to win every situation. Like,
it feels like you're breaking it, essentially. Like, you're not doing it fairly. But that's I like stuff like that because that's still within the fiction of the game. Like, what's nice about the leaving messages and having to pick from that limited thing is that it stops you writing racist gibberish or writing stuff that breaks the fiction. Essentially, it turns every comment into this kind of weird poetry.
Yeah, and that's again, it's just like, I mean, I can see why it got the praise it did, and I think one of the things that definitely happened is when it first got to review, because the only people playing it in the world were games journalists and a certain community of games journalists. I think they probably played it in the perfect conditions to play it when no one had beaten it before, so there was no wiki or guide to go to on the internet, and all they had was each other's experiences and advice. And I imagine the first person who figured out take all your clothes off and run, it felt like a hero to then spread that information. And it's a shame that there's no way of really repeating that. Although people are, like, there are messages around the area that just say, like, try running and, like, stuff like that. And they're mixed in with messages that are try jumping, and that sort of level of distrust and things. Like, sometimes someone will put a message next to someone else's message saying liar ahead, which is like, just like, and that person will get really rated up because you can rate the comments as well. So like, upvote things and, like, cool.
I really hope other games rip off that thing as well. Like, mostly single player games that just have little bits of multiplayer and leaving messages for each other and encoding the world in that way.
You mentioned Bethesda games. I think we've got a question about them later on in Twitter questions as well. Like, I would totally wouldn't mind that level of interaction with other people in an Elder Scrolls game where like, if you were wandering through a cave and you see the ghost of another adventurer or something just getting killed by a trap, then that sort of thing sort of adds seamlessly to what's going on.
There's stuff with Steam making that stuff easier and easier. Like, there's indie games like Cargo Commander, a really simple game we talked about before. But as you're exploring these different ships, you will find the bodies of other players that have been to the same region as you, and you can find their bodies and then loot their corpse and pick up their stuff. And it just creates this little bit of atmosphere of, hey, this world is alive, there's lots of other people here, and it makes it scarier as well because someone else died here. That's really cool.
That's the promise of it. I think it's not that I don't want full co-op. I'm not actually I don't want
not from every game.
Like, I mean, I've had the opportunity to summon real people into my game a few times, and I tend not to take it because I don't know what they'll want to do. I might I'm just doing my own thing, but I like knowing that they're about, and it's also really satisfying to watch the ghosts of people dying on something that you've sussed out. Like, and you can go back and you just see these people failing, and you only see them. You don't see the monsters that are attacking them. So it's kind of this one-sided little vignette of someone getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back and falling off a cliff or something. It's good.
It's good.
Video game.
What have you been playing, Graham?
I've been playing Deus Ex Human Revolution,
Wow.
which we've talked about in the podcast before, specifically as relates why I haven't completed it. Which is that I played the preview build through twice, and the preview build was 10 hours long. The first playthrough took me 17 hours. The second playthrough took me another 8 or something like that. So I'd played through that first 10 hours for almost 30 hours, and doing it again when the game came out, and doing it in the canonical way for my character, which is that I don't kill anyone, so I have to sneak past everything. I just couldn't bear doing it again right away. But I've finally done it. I went back this weekend and I did all of Detroit, and I didn't kill anyone, and I'm now at the start of Shanghai. It's a good game.
I haven't played that game in so long. Like in my head, it feels like it was like I played and finished when it came out, and like now it feels like ancient history.
Well, it came out August 2011, which is not very long ago at all. But I'm kind of curious what you guys think about this, because my perception of it is that the game has been forgotten. Like, it came out and it got really good reviews, and everyone went, "Holy shit, it's Deus Ex," and it kind of lives up to the first game. They didn't screw it up. Well done. That's great. And then it just seemed to go, don't know. And
it wasn't in a lot of end of year lists, was it, in 2000?
No, it wasn't.
We gave it something, but
I think part of that was that it came out in August, and then in November, Skyrim came out. And
it was, it's still, I think it was definitely my favourite game of that year.
I think it would be right up there for me. But it's like it's a similar sort of game to Dishonored, say. And Dishonored came out and was a big success and seemed to get more attention beyond just the critics than Human Revolution did. And then Bethesda came out and explicitly said, "Hey, sales have been great, much better than we expected. I think we've got a new franchise on our hands. There might be a Dishonored 2. Whereas Human Revolution, there was no noise of that. There was kind of just, I did all right. There was a bit of DLC.
Good DLC.
It's funny that
Good
that
DLC.
whole thing has gone so quiet. I wonder. It's sort of. I think there's a what I would have expected. I think if you'd asked me on the time when Deus Ex Human Revolution was popular, is okay. Well, next year we're going to see Thief 4 then.
Yeah.
Which has vanished. Like.
I just Montreal are doing the multiplayer for Tomb Raider.
Yeah, exactly. So it's.
I think they were supposed to be working on Deus Ex and Thief forever and ever.
So what happened? Did they just back out of stealth games? There feels like that's the narrative, right? Like I can think of reasons why Dishonored did better. I think it is more distinctive as a game. I think its iconography and its imagery is much more unusual, and
that usually isn't a reason for a game to do well. In fact, people usually go for things that are really familiar to them.
You can argue that, but
but you can argue that, say, a game like BioShock, with its complexity and its systems, as compared to something like Call of Duty, did well because the big daddies were so iconic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's great that idiosyncratic games are doing well. It's just that seems to be counterintuitive.
I think both precedents are true in a way. I think there is a precedent for people to, or I think there's a precedent for people greenlighting games, not Steam greenlight as in funding and backing games that match a template that they know will sell.
Yeah.
I don't think it necessarily corresponds to consumer behavior. I think that's a marketing perspective, actually. I think that's the assumption, is that people will only buy something they already know, but I think then you get games like BioShock or Dishonored that...
I think games have to be easily describable or explainable. They have to have a hook where you can say, look at this cool looking robot underwater guy.
Yeah, magic steampunk assassin.
Or look at the toy boys, aren't they cool? And I think Deus Ex does have that, cool guy with fist chisels and shades. It's cyberpunk.
It's RoboCop,
but people understand that, and literally there is RoboCop in the game.
Yeah, I know.
But people see that fiction and go, oh, okay, I get it. I'm like a sci-fi detective, and I've got cool robot arms. And so I think there's enough of a hook there that it should have done well.
I think it definitely...
And I think it did okay in terms of sales.
But I don't know. The question of why it didn't stick around is
Like, maybe my perception is completely wrong. Maybe everyone loves this game and still remembers that it was great and hasn't forgotten it. And it's just that we don't hear much about it because it doesn't have a modding community, say.
Yeah, that might be it. And also, they had its one DLC extra, and
Yeah.
then that's kind of subsequently.
Which even that, although it was great and we gave it a really high score, didn't seem to, like most places, didn't even bother to review it. There was no talk of it. It was, it was like 4 hours long or something like that. It was, it was actually good.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if, again, Dishonored, I guess, it's just, we have to have this conversation in a year about Dishonored and see if people, because that's getting its story DLC this year as well. And, like, if that is going to be, suddenly it's comes back and everyone's still cares about Dishonored, it'd be interesting.
There's, to talk about other things to do with Human Revolution, there's so much that's great about it, but it's interesting playing it now and seeing things that are crap that I didn't notice were crap the first time around, like bits of animation, which are just, or character design, like comparing how just regular NPCs in Dishonored look compared to how NPCs in Deus Ex look. Human Revolution looks like a game from 5 years before Dishonored. And it's not, it's just the art style and the amount of attention to detail they've put into designing those characters is maybe that, Eidos Montreal at that point was a relatively new young studio. This was, I think, their first game. Maybe it was made on a lower budget. So I noticed stuff like that. There's also stuff in the writing, which I think is overall really good in terms of its quest design and certain characters and stuff like that. And then other bits of writing which are just abysmal, like writing by people who have never met a human being but have just watched many, many episodes of Law and Order and CSI and people who talk like that. There's also little things I dislike, like when you have a conversation with someone, normally you're selecting, to charm them or to antagonize them or something like that, and you're having it feels like you're having an actual conversation with a human being, and then occasionally there will just be a button that says quest details, as if you're going to say to them, quest details please, and then they start talking about your mission, and it's the weird bits of like that which just kind of break the fiction, like what you were talking about before with Dark Souls and how it doesn't do that, and this game does in these slight, strange, annoying ways. It's also interesting comparing how the stealth works in Deus Ex to something like Dishonored. Again, Dishonored is so based around the blink mechanic and getting hate and stuff like that, and is much more forgiving, I'm realizing, than Human Revolution is. Like Human Revolution is real, like enemies are really quick to start shooting at you once they've seen you. If they see you, if a guard in Dishonored sees you straight on, you can just crawl behind a thing and they'll go, huh? And they'll kind of bling and exclaim and they'll kind of walk over.
Previously happened in the mission, I found.
Okay.
So that's how it works. Like the first time that happens in Dishonored, you'll get away with it. The second time, you won't.
Okay.
Because basically, like, in addition to each guard's individual in the moment alert state, there is a global alert state, I think, for the entire level. So that
that's interesting.
If you've basically had to run and hide from the guards, then you subsequently have a much smaller window to get seen because they now know what it is.
Okay.
Right? So, like, the idea is the first time it could just be rats, but if they've subsequently chased a man and then the man has vanished and then they see something else, they'll instantly go to, it's that man again, rather than...
Maybe Human Revolution's doing the same thing then, because there are times in that when if they see, say, a bit of my arm or something like that, they'll go, huh? And they'll go alert and they'll start looking. But if they just see me dead on in the way that they would in Dishonored, then they just almost immediately start shooting you in the face. And it's also just like Deus Ex, is much more about just sneaking. It's just about crouching down and hiding behind things. Whereas Dishonored, you get a much greater sense of power.
Yeah.
Because you're blinking around and you're constantly in hate, whereas Human Revolution, I feel much more vulnerable a lot of the time.
Yeah, but a counterpoint to that, I think actually the sneaking in Deus Ex, because it's so centered on it, makes it feel like a more fundamental game mechanic than it does in Dishonored, where you feel like you're actually just avoiding parts of the game by sneaking. We've complained about this before on the podcast, or at least I have. But yeah, but I think in Deus Ex, I mean, if however you go through those levels, you are. You feel like you're being part of the level, whereas in Dishonored, it feels like you've found a little way of getting around the gameplay.
Yeah, I mean Dishonored struggles. Dishonored is a much more vertical game than Human Revolution. Like in terms of the way it's designed, the way its levels are laid out, they are designed for you to be able to, get up to places, and the problem is that there's no counter to that in there. enemy tool set. Like there's, they find ways of gating off areas with walls of light and things to prevent other kinds of, and to encourage more creative play. Like I think if I was going to make any changes to Dishonored, I would just make certain aerial routes harder. Like, some of the assassinations are completely trivialized by like 2 chandeliers. If you remove those 2 chandeliers, you'd suddenly have to go to the rest of the level. But the presence of those 2 chandeliers means that you don't. And like that's the sort of thing that I think Dishonored does wrong. But
that's really interesting, right? Because that's almost like a level of irreducible difficulty. Like if you're going to have difficulty settings in games, then there's a point at which the level geometry makes things difficult in a way which you can't change with a slider.
You could do
so. But you could make it more forgiving when you see guards, and you could just plow through it. But I mean, people want to play that game sneakily, and they might want to play the game sneakily at an easy level.
Well, I mean, the example I would give is, imagine if it was a Deus Ex game where a particular level has a window cleaner's lift that could get you into a building, and on the hardest setting, it starts off powered down at the bottom of the building, and you've got to go and find a battery and charge it up. And on the easier setting, it's already ready to go. That's how you do scalable difficulty and level design at the same time, purely. There you go.
You've solved it.
Yeah, I think the thing I would, I think I prefer Dishonored's solution to how I prefer Blink as a solution to how do you make stealth more empowering to Human Revolutions, which is invisibility, which is when you get the cloak and the takedowns and stuff.
I never used the cloak because you have to eat so many chocolate bars in order to keep it powered up.
I used to like to imagine that, because you can spend points to upgrade your storage capacity, but obviously, Adam Jensen isn't wearing a backpack or anything. I think that they are actually like actual storage containers within his prosthetic legs, so that
just full of chocolate bars,
massive,
like Robocop.
like catering-sized tubs of energy bars, one in each thigh.
See, I don't think Human Revolution is that interested in making you feel empowered in terms of its stealth. I think they felt quite self-conscious about it because it's a Deus Ex game, that it has to be quite difficult, or it has to live up to the expectations of an unreasonable PC audience, to be honest. And so the cloak, like as Martin says, you've got to eat a lot of chocolate bars to continually recharge that, and at its basic level, when you unlock it with the 2 praxis points it costs, it lasts for 3 seconds, which isn't, compared to most games, is nothing at all. Like that's long enough to get you between this box and that box.
Yeah,
and you have to go, and then you go back to hiding with your back against the wall and just creeping. Whereas Dishonored, I'm just blink, blink, magic asshole, jumping around the place.
Although you will run out of remedy doing that. There's.
But it recharges pretty quickly, and it recharges enough that you can, I think, always use blink.
Yeah, you can if you run out.
Sometimes have to rest. Yeah, and then it recharges, and you can again.
Yeah, but when I say empowering, I think there's so much about Human Revolution that is intended explicitly to do that. I don't think the thing they're going for is like, I am not a super soldier. The tension is like, I think the tension has to be doing it perfectly versus using your superpowers to do it, which involve the fact that you're a bulletproof man with chisels in his arms.
Yeah, this is true.
Like, it's not amnesia, you know what I mean? There's no, like, packing yourself into a cupboard to hide from something you can't possibly face. It's not stealth in the same way. It's about... That's why, I prefer Dishonored as a stealth game because of the way its other systems fit together and its mission design and everything else. But I see what you mean.
I think there's a thing these games do where, as well as having the difficulty modes of easy, normal, and hard, there are kind of micro difficulty modes which the player selects themselves when they decide how they're going to take on a level. They decide, I'm going to do this stealthily, without being seen, and without killing anyone. And they're making the game harder for themselves for fun. And I think Human Revolution plays that up, where if you're going the stealth route, that's a harder way to play it than if you just run in and shoot everyone with shotguns. With Dishonored, I think they try to kind of level it out so that there's less of a difficulty difference between running straight in and killing everyone and doing the stealth route.
Yeah,
like they're about equivalent, unless you're doing the kind of unseen, no trace playthrough that you did, unless you're going to that level of arbitrary limits on yourself.
Yeah, I also did a Dishonored playthrough with no magic, which was also really interesting because that does turn it into Deus Ex basically, because then it's all about kind of manual stealth and climbing point and finding ways up parts of the level you wouldn't already be able to find you out. Yeah, I can see that.
Boss fights are still shit as well.
Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
the one thing that the reason I've never done a pacifist playthrough of Human Evolution is because it makes no sense. It really annoyed me that it counts the guys in the tutorial, the opening, before you're augmented. Like when you're, at the start of Human Evolution, your officer's attacked, and you're just a human person with a gun at that point, the security officer, and you're watching your colleagues get gunned down by gun-toting terrorists in the lobby.
Yeah, it would seem okay to take them out.
But you're not
at
allowed
that
to
point,
shoot
morally.
if you want your, achievement for pacifist playthrough. You're not allowed to shoot them then.
Yeah.
Again, Dishonored does that a lot better. Like, it doesn't count the assassins at the start. Like, it starts counting deaths after Corvo is imprisoned. So the bit at the start where the Empress is attacked by assassins, you're kind of allowed to go for them.
Yes, kind of your job.
Yeah, exactly. Like, worst Lord Protector ever.
I think I almost very rarely play games stealthily because I want to make him harder for myself. I don't. Well, at least not consciously. I never make that choice. I do it because I'm compelled in some way by the narrative, pathetic as it is, that I'm manipulated so easily.
Yeah.
But like in something like Deus Ex, like I remember coming to the DLC, and because I'd finished the game months and months ago by the time I played the DLC, I wanted to stay canonical to my playthrough of Deus Ex the first time, and at some point during Deus Ex, I couldn't quite remember when, I just thought, right, I'm going to fucking get these bastards, and I went and stopped being pacifist, and I killed every one of those motherfuckers. And I couldn't remember where the DLC inserts in the storyline.
On the way to
I had
Singapore.
this terrible kind of crisis when I was approaching the first bad guy in the DLC, and I couldn't remember whether I had to kill him or not. So in the end, I knocked him out and then dropped him down a lift shaft as a kind of compromise.
Yeah, when I get that, I sometimes play games as just myself, in which case I play them as a reasonably nice person who will sometimes kill people.
Just like you.
Yeah, sometimes, but only when, it makes kind of emotional sense, when it's out of revenge or I'm just angry. That's really the only time I'll murder people. But other times I do it because it's really satisfying to have the extra challenge of playing it in a particular way.
Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing, but like my criteria for killing someone is basically like if I'm cornered and it would make no sense not to. Like, and that's actually why I didn't notice how shit the boss fights were in Deus Ex the first time around, because in each of those cases, like, actually I didn't notice that there weren't non-lethal options because, like, this man has a chain gun arm or something. I'm going to kill, like, I'd rather not die, so, like, I will throw mines at him. Like, there was never a kind
Yeah, I
of...
didn't have any mines. I only had a trank dart.
Okay.
Yeah, see,
He takes a
I'm
lot
going
of
to throw
trank
barrels
darts
like
to go
him,
down.
like Donkey
and then
Kong.
he still dies.
Yes, yeah, and then he
Shit
blows
was so
up.
many-
I'm like, but I tried so hard to keep you alive, Gunter, or whatever your name is.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, I went into that boss fight with tranquilizer gun, a stun gun, and a pep gun, and none of those are lethal weapons. Or
Yeah, I always kept
diehards.
I
I just had to empty my pockets out, run into one of the rooms of the side, ditch all my stuff on the ground, pick up the weapons that were there, kill the guy, and then run back in, pick up my weapons, start putting them back in my pockets again. And this was I'm still angry about the boss fight because I just played it last night. But these rages are 18 months old now.
That's not even the worst of the boss fights, Graham. You've got a lot to look forward
it
to.
really isn't.
Well, how does the game go overall? Is Detroit the first 10 hours the best of it, or is Shanghai better?
I think the actual hub, like the actual mission design, gets better and better and better as it goes on.
Okay.
Like the actual design of the places I think definitely towards the end. I can't. There are sequences in. I didn't, as I said, I didn't play a non-lethal playthrough, so there were definitely points in. I think Shanghai's probably the most claustrophobic it gets, in terms deliberately, like the places it traps you in when you get kind of cornered by, enemies and things. Like the moments in that, there was like, no, I have to fucking kill everyone in this building because there's no way I'm getting out otherwise. Like the raid, you know what I mean? Just sort of, trapped in these kind of little apartment buildings with huge amounts of enemies patrolling the corridors. Like later on, there are big sort of complexes and facilities and things that are substantially better than everything else in the game.
I don't think there are any hubs that are quite as,
I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in the Shanghai hub. But
as engaging as Shanghai or Detroit.
and then when you get to the
But
second level,
It's not Shanghai, actually. I misspoke when I said it's Hangshay.
It's the artificial island, isn't it? because it's got 2 levels.
Yeah, it's got 2 levels.
Yeah, it's.
Is it Hang Shay?
There's no way we're going to come out good from guessing
China.
this.
It's China.
China. The country of China. The People's Republic of China. Martin's doing a face.
Yeah. So Deus Ex is quite good. Okay, there was something else I was going to say about it, but I've forgotten now. So we should probably move on.
Would you like to play Deus Ex on a new 40K resolution TV screen?
The grim darkness of the television.
I don't know what 40K means. Is it like Warhammer? It's the
It
only
doesn't-
war.
Well, it's a marketing
That's the joke
term,
out,
so
isn't
it doesn't really mean anything. It's not even a number that the resolution goes up to. I think the resolution is something like 3840. So they've just called it 40K because marketing
3840
people
by
like big numbers.
2.
I don't even know. By wide. By
And
big.
to be honest, I never really understood the whole 720i 1080p thing. What?
They're just one of the
Progressive or interlaced.
yeah. It's just a number for the resolution, the number of pixels in one or more of the
One of them is 1920 by
Dimensions.
1080. Yeah.
yeah.
Why don't they say that?
Well,
I've only
because-
been saying that for decades now.
Yeah,
Why
I don't
do
know. I
have
think
to
they
change
needed
it?
a new marketing term for people who played on console because suddenly TV stopped being standard definition, and those numbers sounded like a good way to sell TVs. But 2 numbers with an X in the middle, that might be a bit too much for people to understand. Even though actually taking away one of those numbers makes that number on its own make
Because
no
they use
sense.
the smaller of the 2 numbers as well.
People-
They use the height
people-
rather than the width. So
People might have realised that their TV that they spent 600 quid on could only do the same resolution as the PC monitor they spent 200 quid on. And go, huh,
yeah,
that's weird.
Yeah, there is that. But I mean, this I think this is quite exciting. The onrush of technology. They're a bit expensive now, what being over 30 grand each. But apparently they'll be
comes down in price.
attainable. Well, no, somebody said it would be down to, I can't remember the terrible euphemism they used, like attainable or something like that. I don't know what
Attainable, like
a price
a
which
car
is
or-
attainable to a CEO of a company that makes these things is probably not attainable to mere mortals like us.
yeah.
But it's interesting. I don't think the question is whether anything will really make use of those kind of massive resolutions, and it's likely that they won't for a while. Like
Well,
consoles, the consoles are probably even now. We've kind of finally got rid of the shackles of the past console generation, and PCs now being able to, really use their graphical oomph. I suspect that the next generation of consoles will reshackle us essentially.
Well,
because
I think it'll just bring the bar up again.
yeah, I don't know, but I think devs are probably not too keen on making games for that kind of high resolution. There's a lot of resources they need to throw.
Like what's the name of the iPad screen that they added?
Retina.
Retina.
Oh, yeah.
So Retina displays are ridiculously high resolution, higher resolution than your PC monitor. We've been able to make screens of that resolution for a while, but they haven't taken off because there's no demand. Why would you want? In all likelihood, your graphics card can't render out at that higher resolution anyway, and so they've not really taken off. And I like. Do you think that 4K is going to be like Blu-ray for this generation, and that Sony are going to lumber their console with this unwieldy thing in order to sell Sony televisions?
I doubt even Sony. Well, I mean, they'll certainly try and sell consoles as a result of it because they've got some flagship titles which are confirmed to make use of it. But the majority of people won't use it. They'll just be normal-looking games that have been upscaled in often probably ugly ways to fit onto these screens. PCs though will be the first place that this is made use of because I mean you can for a cutting edge at the moment we've suddenly got a glut of hardware reviews of the latest graphics cards being what's it called when you plug like 4 of them in at the same time?
The
There's-
Crossfire.
Crossfire,
SLI.
Or SLI.
yeah. And so we've had a spate of those, and that seems to be the kind of next tier, the next step. And those things will be able to put out the games at that kind of resolution.
But I mean,
Without
both
too much
graphics card
trouble.
manufacturers have been pushing Crossfire and SLI for a long time, and no one does it. If no one says I'm going to buy a second of my old graphics card. They just say, "Oh, I'm going to buy a new one and replace the old one."
the test is if this thing. I mean, if the industry finds value in producing games, as if games weren't already expensive enough to make, the kind of fidelity that requires people, then people will upgrade. But as it is, we're in a situation where, my PC is 2 years old now, which is a weird thought, and still capable of playing every new game that comes out on Ultra, because it was a very good PC when I bought it, but no need to upgrade any part of it.
But and people, there are certainly people who read our website who decry that, who think that's actually holding back the PC games as genre.
But I think the argument isn't, it's not tech that's holding people back, it's cost. It's cost of development ultimately, because the more resolution means the higher quality assets you've got to pump out, which means the more texture people you need.
And it's not necessarily that doesn't necessarily lead to a direct gain in how good things look either.
No.
Like a lot of people at the beginning, when this last console generation was dying, and people were looking at what was going to be the next gen. Developers were talking about what they call perceptive detail. So rather than just kind of mega resolutions, it's how you can take something with quite a small resolution and add loads of relatively cheap, hardware-wise, post-processing effects and things like that to make things look really cinematic and lush and coherent as a visual, rather than high-res textures are nice, but they're not necessarily as effective in tricking the eye into thinking it's a real 3D space as other things.
At the end of the day, it only really matters if they can be used as a marketing tool to sell more games. It only works. Like, designers are only going to put the effort into doing it if their screenshots are therefore comparably, obviously better than everyone else's.
Oh, we already get bullshit screenshots of that kind of mega resolution.
Part of the bullshit screenshot thing, though, is I think that they're already making textures at a much higher resolution than they're going to actually use in the final game, and then they downsample them or downscale them or whatever, in order to hit certain performance benchmarks on PC and in order to make it actually run on the consoles.
Yeah, I mean, also you can trust the community to pick up the ball on this a lot. Like things like the SweetFX shaders and all the different kind of injectors that people use. Like there's plenty of renderer hacks and things that people will use to super sample their games, or they currently do.
Duncan Harris does a lot of 4,000 by whatever screenshot stuff all through.
It does look fucking amazing, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, he hacks these monitor drivers.
Yeah, well, I mean,
do that stuff.
Like, I mean, I've started over before Christmas and hacked apart. We used a bunch of the shaders, injectors, and SweetFX and EMB and a bunch of things to kind of. And did my own little EMB script for Skyrim to kind of try and replicate natural light and stuff, and that was really interesting because it's just I'm just going to redesign this game now. Thanks. And there's that when the technology picks up and if people can go out and buy monitors that can take advantage of that, guarantee the community will find cool things to do with it. So there's it's a good thing in that regard. Like whether or not how far the industry supports it, there's lots of people out there fixing things.
The other thing everyone's showing off at CES is little mini PCs, whether it's the new weird thing from Nvidia or it's the
Project Little Weird thing.
or it's the Piston in partnership with Valve. It's not a Steambox. Please, everyone, stop calling it the Steambox. Steambox.
Yeah.
What do you think of those, Martin? Martin.
They're right. Well, the Nvidia thing is fucking horrendous to look at. It looks. I mean, I'm sure the promise of it is that it's a handheld which can stream things from your PC. I don't know whether I particularly want that for most games because I play games on my PC that I want to play on a PC rather than on a handheld. So I don't know whether there's a lot of value in that. And it does look just ridiculously ugly. It's like, I don't know, somebody's conception of the 2000 era design from 1970.
It's designed by the same people who designed the Nokia N-Gage, by the looks of it.
Yeah.
It looks like a Dreamcast controller that's been left under a radiator.
It is a sad thing.
It's
next to a phone.
But surely the whole streaming games to a handheld device, surely that's a software problem which just gets solved by an iPad app. Like there are already iPad apps and software for your computer which will let you stream your desktop to your iPad. So if you want to do your accounting software or whatever on your iPad on the couch, streaming from your PC, you can do that. And the problem with doing it with games is latency. It can't stream fast enough over however its net code works, or its LAN code, I suppose. But surely sooner or later, someone is able to do that properly with software, or someone releases a USB dongle that I plug into my PC, and then I can do it with my iPad and plug a controller into that. Why do I need a whole new thing for it?
I mean, they're kind of selling the link between, because obviously you need a particular video graphics card as well to take advantage of it. So they're selling, I guess, if they control the whole rendering process, then they can make it work super, super well. And I can see the appeal of, like, I mean, I play a bunch of PC games with a pad, like Dark Souls and whatever. I can see.
Oh yeah, but I mean, you don't necessarily want to have the screen attached to your pad, which is what this is.
No, I mean, yeah, if I wanted to play PC games on the TV, I'd be much more likely to stream it to the TV than...
The thing is, like, when I'm holding a pad, I have my hands in my lap. But if I'm sitting down with my hands in my lap, holding the pad, touching my head down, that's a really kind of awkward position. That's really bad.
Yeah, you'd have to hold it up.
Yeah, so you're going to have your arms kind of in the air in front of you.
Like you do care.
Yeah.
I guess Nvidia just looked at the riotous success of the PSP Vita and said, "We want some of that action." Yeah, fools. But what's much more interesting are the Steam Box-alikes. Because I
love that the Steam Box likes, even though the Steam Box itself does not yet exist.
Yeah. Poor old third-party manufacturers not making Steam Box. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think having a very large variety of specs will.
I think price is key. I think the
$999.
Yeah, it's way too expensive. Like,
it is just a PC. I mean, for a PC of that spec, that's isn't it a quad core?
Right. It's not brilliant.
Phenom 2, 4 gig of RAM or something like that. Like that's a pretty good PC, and then to get it in that size is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who said this, but someone said brilliantly that I'm really unsure about having £1,000 PC that's big enough for my dog to steal. Like, and then put it in a place where that might well happen. I think if I was going to spend that much money on a PC, I don't want to yield. I don't want to suddenly require proprietary boards and things for upgrades and replacements. Like, you can spend the same amount of money and get as good, if better, PC where you control the bits and bobs, and you can still build into a small form factor if you want.
Yeah, Nathan Brown of Edge has done exactly that. He's built a PC, I think, for £800 or something like that, and he's been able to stick it beneath his TV by having a little dinky box. But I mean, there is a lot of fear inherent in that process for lots of people who would otherwise enjoy PC gaming, I think.
No, it's not that people wouldn't enjoy the PC, they get it. I just feel like for this idea to be successful, it needs to be able to compete with the consoles in terms of price.
Oh yeah,
and because I think that's ultimately...
It depends on what your measure of success is. I mean, if they're going to have any real impact on the console market, then they've got to be much cheaper. But for a niche thing, right, it's kind of it's going to serve a certain audience. It's going to like it.
But I think there's clearly potential there, and clearly these people think so as well, for this not to be a niche thing. You know, that ultimately there's a point where you go, okay, well, you're used to having the clunky, loud Xbox under your TV that has a disk drive that sounds like a Harrier taking off and all this stuff. We can sell you this little box, and it plugs into this iTunes for games, where everything's cheap all the time. That's a really good proposition, right? Like, oh, you know that game you just spent £50 on the console? It's £5 this weekend on Steam. Like,
for me, the reason it has to be cheaper than a regular desktop PC is that if I buy a desktop PC, I can play everything on it, including games that require a mouse and keyboard, like Civilization 5. If I get this thing and plug it into my TV, that's fine if I want to play Dark Souls or Mass Effect or FIFA, but if I want to play Civilization 5, I need to go get the keyboard and mouse. I don't want to use a keyboard and mouse on my lap in front of my TV on my couch. And so I want it to be cheaper because realistically
it's a lower value proposition.
It's giving me an access to half of the games I would traditionally play on a PC. So
I mean, I would happily buy a box that existed to help my PC stream media to the TV. Some kind of intermediary box that pulls all its data from
You
the
can
PC
totally get those, and they're super cheap. In fact, you could probably do it with it depends on your TV, but you can probably do it with a little USB machine that costs you £50 if you've got a reasonably new HD TV. And if you don't, then you can easily get a little netbook style PC and net top. Which will cost you like £160 for a basic one that would run a media server for you.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. That's what they're competing with. And that's, for enthusiasts. So that's the tricky thing about the argument of like, well, they need to sell it to this niche. They're not going to sell it to a niche for £1,000.
They're not going to sell it to a niche. Yes, they are. I repeated the thing you said, and then I thought about it and thought, no way, that's the thing I disagree with. I do think they'll sell it to a niche. I don't think they'll sell it to a broader audience, but I think they'll find a niche enough to recoup their investment.
All right, yes, man.
Disagreement, eh?
I think it's too expensive.
Did anyone play Stephen Increper Lavelle?
Oh, yeah.
Is that his name? His
the
indie game.
The one about the club night.
Yeah, Slave to God.
Yes.
I saw it. I saw you playing it. And I've read some things people have written about it, but I haven't actually played it myself.
I played it in inverted commas, in as much as you can play it.
You played it. It's a game. We've been over this.
I don't know whether I got stuck or whether there's just no end to it.
There is an ending of sorts. What happened? Tell us your.
We should probably say what it is. It's like trippy. It's like.
Is it also well philosophical? Is that just
possibly? But I
It's,
wasn't able to glean any real meaning from it.
It has some meaning.
It looks a bit like a crudely rendered club, but
it's an abstract
really
clubbing
psychedelic
night
lots
experience.
of effects thrown over the top.
I've had them.
And you walk in, so you walk in, and there's all crazy sounds and lights,
All
and
crazy
shit.
sounds and lights and things.
Then I went and stood on a dance floor, and some new images appeared, and then I was like, oh.
Okay,
Don't I
well,
turn it off?
That's last time me and Senior went to Bristol.
yeah, I mean, it's quite abstract. It's first person. It's trippy, psychedelic nightclub with people, kind of weird, statuesque, simple polygonal human beings on the dance floor dancing around, and a DJ and bodyguards and a guy behind the bar, and a couple of guys standing off to the side. And there's toilets and there's a dead end and.
I could see that the
there's
music
kind of-
changed depending on where you were, and other things seemed to change visually. Like there seemed to be repeating patterns that appeared if you stood in particular places. I couldn't work out the significance of that at all. So.
Well, you can go on the dance floor and you can start dancing, and then you can essentially have a relationship with another one of the dancers. You kind of get this heart symbol appears on their chest and beams out, and if you stand in front of it, then you lock on to this other person, and you just spend hours dancing with this person until
Hours, really, Graham?
Well, it cuts essentially. It cuts to later in the night. Basically, you have this really intense, visual, abstract, trippy experience, and then it cuts and everyone is gone, and the whole dance floor is empty except for one guy who's still just left there dancing, and the two guys by the side who are drunk, and basically the whole night has passed.
See, I thought I got that far, but it didn't cut. I was just standing there waiting for something to happen with it being locked into this person, and nothing did.
While that's happening, you can still kind of control the WASD and the mouse and stuff like that. And as you do that, the screen gets trippier and trippier. So I wonder if you have to move around a whole bunch in simulation of dancing or something, and then up to a certain point. So basically, you get a bunch of different experiences like that. You can go over to the bartender and you can buy some drinks, and you can get really drunk really quickly. You can stumble into the bathroom, and as soon as you get anywhere near the stalls, the cubicle is out of order. It's locked, it's locked, and there's someone inside. And as soon as you get anywhere near the stalls, you just start peeing. And it's really hard to get your pee into the thing, so it goes all over the floor and all over the walls, and then it kind of stops. The stream stops, and as you walk away, a bit more comes out. So even if you've done it really well, you still get pee everywhere. And you can. There's
still like one of your nights out to Bristol, Chris?
Yeah.
Certainly someone's night out to Bristol. I've been in those toilets, but there's a bunch of basically visual metaphors for a club night, and the music's good, and it's quite an interesting little 7-minute long experience, and it's free, and it's a game, and people should go download it.
All right.
Links in the show notes.
Yeah, to Ink Repair's website.
Should we do some Twitter questions?
Let's.
I feel like there was something else we wanted to talk about, or I wanted to talk about that I thought of
If you think of it during Twitter questions, this is a loose format.
This is true. I feel like,
once we start Twitter questions, there's no turning back, Chris.
Yeah, a lot of
it's just
Twitter questions.
sliding on. Oh, I know, that's what I wanted to talk about. We talked about 2012, tried to sum it up last time on the podcast, and I think we did a pretty good job. But what game mechanics from 2012 did you see people use that you most hope that the industry rips off in 2013? And I'm thinking of Dark Souls, say, and it's kind of...
Yeah, that's technically a 2011 game.
Yeah, but PC 2012. It's kind of ambient multiplayer stuff.
Yeah, okay. Let's.
I can come back to this question. Let's do some Twitter questions,
Oh,
and you two can mull that over.
Okay, but then I've also got to mull this over. I've got a double mull.
What? You're also mulling over Twitter questions. They're not normally that sophisticated.
What if I'm doubling? Well, we got a quadruple
Well, okay,
mull.
well,
Joe.
let's. I'll go
Monster
first.
mull.
I'll go
Holy
first.
shit!
I
Okay.
hope people rip off Risk Legacy. I know other people have said the same thing.
Oh, I see. Board games. Oh yeah.
Well, I
you
mean,
know.
just anything. I'm cheating, I suppose. But I played, what was it, 6 games, I think, we got through of Risk Legacy. This was me, Rich McCormick, former web editor, Owen Hill, Michael Gapper, who was the person who bought the game, and another person who I've
Who's dead to you now?
completely forgotten, which is terrible. And
Let's
they
hope
will-
they're not listening to this podcast.
But Risk Legacy, to explain it very briefly, is the board game Risk, but as you play it, the board changes and you make decisions that permanently scar the board. You tear up cards that you don't use. You drop nuclear bombs that have an effect, and there are spoilers to the board game, basically. And the idea is that you kind of craft this world and you craft the game as you go along, and you play it with the same people every time, and you get this kind of history. Our game fell apart because Owen, one of our number, moved to Sweden.
Yeah,
So
he will do that.
That's
Yeah.
selfish.
so now
prick.
we can't play that game anymore. But it's a really interesting piece of board game design that I wish strategy games would steal. And there's elements of it in Dwarf Fortress, say, which I love as well, where you all your games of Dwarf Fortress exist within the same world. So if you play a game of Dwarf Fortress and you build a fort and it becomes this big thing and then it collapses and you die, you can then enter that same world in its roguelike mode, and your old fortress that you built is now a dungeon within that roguelike that you can go explore, and it'll have all the
nice.
history of your world on the walls and stuff like that. So I want more games to rip that kind of thing off. I want procedural worlds that I am encoding with my own history as I play.
Mine's similar, I think. And it's not by no means a 2012 mechanic exclusively, but it's something that came back, I think, last year, which is being able to kind of, I want the same level, I want more games, especially more strategy games, and more roguelikes to have the same level of sort of personality that comes with customizing your XCOM crew or your FTL crew. That kind of putting your mates in the game thing that kind of seemed to make a resurgence last year. Maybe there were better examples of it recently. But I'm a sucker for just character customization in games anyway. Like if you give me the option to create characters, I will spend ages on it. And I thought that had a nice expression in ways that weren't just RPGs in terms of naming all your FTL dudes after your flatmates or
Another thing that Dwarf Fortress does,
Yeah.
you can't really customize the dwarves you get, but you can change their name. And so, when we did Steve Hoggerty's diary in PC Gamer, they were all named after the PC Gamer team. And that's just fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's just and the amount of good XCOM stories that have come out of, Graham freaking out and executing Rich or whatever. No, that was the other way around. Sorry.
Who was it who was playing with romantic writers? Was it Tom Senior?
Senior, was playing with romantic poets.
Yeah.
Keats was one of his major. They were all killed apart from Keats, which is the opposite of what actually happened. No, well, Shelley managed to drown as well. But there's
Back to the English literature podcast.
It's not a mechanic, but at the end of 30 Flights of Loving, which is a really nice, extremely short game by Brendan Chung, there's a it's kind of is this a spoiler? Fuck it. There's a gallery at the end of that game which shows you all of the assets in the game on the wall next to the names of the people who made them. And I just like to see that for every game ever.
Much better than
And after the credits, I want to walk through a gallery of assets, see what people made. And, the 30 Flights of Loving also has that thing that Valve made popular of having in-game commentary. And still, so few games do that. And really, they could. And it'd be brilliant just to walk through environments and see information about how the game's made after you've already picked its bones,
Yeah, I would much rather have that than, because game credits can be interminable. I think maybe we have a problem because they have film-style credits, but the teams that make them are so vast that,
But I'd love to, go in and see it just on the wall. Run over to the one, future toilet that some poor Deus Ex designer spent months crafting, and you don't even flush it. You walk straight past the store and you don't see it in the game. I love to find out who did that. And,
exactly.
Maybe some kind of cry of despair written underneath. Saying, I spent months on this, and you didn't even shit in me.
I can't. I replaced my legs with storage.
But that stuff is really interesting. I remember speaking to JJB, I forget the exact name, Bellatet, who's the
Jean-Jacques Bellatet.
That's the one, designer for Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Is he the guy that looks like Adam Jensen?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was, the character design was based on him.
But he's also a super nice guy, and he knows just a fuck ton about interior design. And we had a really good conversation because they designed all these, all the different furniture sets for each of the different environments you go in. They're each unique, mostly. And, I had a good discussion about, drawers and lamps and desk furniture. It was really interesting. It was just nice to get. Because people have their little passion projects. That's why you survive as a cog in a great machine on a big AAA game. Is because you fucking love particle effects.
Yeah.
And just getting those people's passion and sticking it somewhere in the game.
Someone at Treyarch that really loves designing burnt-out cars. It's like, awesome.
Well, I've got a friend who works at Naughty Dog whose job is waterfalls and sand. Like I think his title is I'm gonna get this wrong.
Sand
Sorry,
Lord.
Neil, if I get this wrong, but environmental physicist or something. Because his
cool.
degree was in computer science and physics and something, but he's just really good at modelling water and sand and stuff like that. So I imagine most people will go, "Oh, that's a nice waterfall." No.
Yeah.
So there should be a moment at the end of the game where you just control maybe a nameless character or something, and
look at it.
Look at this skybox.
Or it's just a waterfall that spells out his name. A series of them, like vast Niagara Falls.
There you go. That's what I want to see more of.
There's lots of stuff in 30 Flights of Living that should be stolen. I mean, I really like its smash cuts and how it tells a story, and I really like when you pick up the orange and you click to peel it. That's what I want in first-person games. I want objects in first-person games I can pick up and hold in my hands and click to interact with, which aren't guns.
Yeah,
because the sense of a world that presented by the fact that I just picked up this object and now I'm doing a thing with it. And first-person shooters often go out of the way to, you can flush the toilet, you can turn on all the faucets, you can turn on and off the lights. I want an object I can pick up and hold in my hands and do something with.
Yeah.
So that's just really nice.
Smash cuts, that's a very good one. I like that. In fact, one of the, it's in lots of ways not especially remarkable game, but Splinter Cell Conviction. It did quite startling things with your position in space and time. Like at one point, you're just I can't remember exactly how it segues into it, but you're in a marketplace, and then the marketplace just kind of folds away, and then you're in a memory that you were having about the last time you saw your daughter, and then that folds away, and you're somewhere else again. But the way it moves, because games can do that in a way which no other medium can, transport you between space and time just like that, and very few games do it. They lock you into a space.
I think last year was the time that very, very Ubisoft thing to do. And it is a very Ubisoft thing to do.
They
finally came back and bit them in the arse. Case in point, Assassin's Creed 3's ridiculous overlong assassin chats. I was having this conversation with one of my flatmates about how we came to the conclusion that all Ubisoft games since Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time have been about a magic time knife. Because it links all of them, right? So you get Assassin's Creed where you stab someone with your magic time knife, and then you go to the place outside space and time where initially it was just this death rites moment where they close their eyes and it's great and Pache and all that stuff. And then Assassin's Creed 2 you have whole cutscenes in outside of time where plot crucial information is delivered in a way that doesn't make any sense. And people are walking in and out.
I suppose that's the same things, but being used in a really bad way.
Far Cry 3's space-time knife fight disco. Which happens twice.
Yeah.
So, you have...
The
three times.
Makes no sense.
Stabbiest disco.
The last one.
The last one, baffling. Space knife disco. And I think that's the point where they've realised, games can abstract environments really well.
But why do they feel the need to explain them? It's like a book trying to explain paper to the reader. It's like you don't need to do that. Just tell a story using the kind of facilities that you have. Games can do all this shit.
I feel like them feeling like you can do this. The world's gonna fold away, and it'll just be you locked in the contest of all time on that dance floor from the front cover of Saturday Night Fever, and has been so overused now that I'd be happy for it to go away for a while and think about what it's done.
Yeah, I think it's because they try and explain it through drugs or, animuses made by space wizards. I mean, it's a facile approach to... And
I'm seriously going to pitch Time Knife to Ubisoft because I reckon they would buy it.
I really like, Bioshock Infinite and the stuff they've showed off with Elizabeth's powers, where she can open these tears in reality, and she does it a lot in order to give you turrets, which doesn't sound very interesting. But there was also a bit they showed in one of
going back to the turret dimension. Everyone is turrets.
the second E3 demo I think they released, where there's like a horse which is dying, and Elizabeth is trying to open a tear, and she opens a tear, and suddenly you're in the middle of an urban street outside a cinema in the early 80s, and Revenge of the Jedi is showing at the cinema.
Which is the original name of
original title for Return of the Jedi. Which is just bizarre, and then it snaps back to Colombia.
I really can't wait to see where that's going.
That's just a really nice thing, and that's an example of the world around you changing.
Yeah, they're at least thinking about it then, rather than I suspect no one was thinking about it at all in Far Cry 3's case. But it wouldn't be a PC Gamer podcast in 2013 if we didn't make fun of Far Cry 3. So,
no.
Although I do like it very much.
It's a fucking panther.
Vodka leopard. Yeah. Press spacebar to knife fight. Think about your free will. Press spacebar to knife fight.
Talking about things that we quite like, but also like to make fun of. Shall we do the Twitter questions?
Yeah, come on. Martin has to go back to his desk and do more work. He's so excited about it. He wants to get this over with. Carbre.
That one came from the forums, I think.
Asks.
Oh, sorry, the threads.
What do you make of the new Piston / Steambox thingy? Sounds promising to me. I think we covered that. Adam Dawes asks, give me the scores. If you were to be exiled to a game universe, which universe would you pick, and what would you do there? I would be exiled to the Mirror's Edge universe because it's beautiful, really well designed, and although it's a dystopia which is really clean, it has no crime or anything like that. It's just nice.
That's because it's policed by a militaristic...
Is this your answer or something he said?
This is my answer.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I would go to the Mirror's Edge universe because if I'm,
because you're a fascist at heart.
Well, if I
just want to live in.
If I care
Sweden.
about politics and if I have ethics and morals and stuff like that, and then I can, I get stuck fighting the power and stuff like that. But if I just,
would you become a free runner?
But
Graham?
if I just
what are they called in that game?
No.
I'd love if you were a free runner.
Living on the edge, the Mirror's Edge.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you love if I was a free runner?
I don't know. I just feel like you don't have the beard of a free runner.
I would probably because there are not that many pleasant game universes. They're often dystopias. But I think not a PC game. But I'd go and live in the Viva Pinata universe, and I'd probably commit some kind of very hungry genocide on all the animals there and die of a sugar coma.
There is something weird about the universe of Viva Pinata because aren't they? I mean, they're pinatas, and they're
chocolates.
Isn't the game about causing them to mate or something like
Yeah,
that? And have little
they fuck
baby
or they die.
pinatas.
It's really ruthless in a lot of ways.
In the game of FIFA Pinata.
You fuck or die.
When they die, does candy come out?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Also, when they do the other thing.
Well,
which game universe would you go to?
Obviously, Mass Effect. Obviously, Mass Effect.
What, kind of post Mass Effect 3 when everything is okay now?
Depends on the
spoilers.
Well, I haven't played it.
He hasn't played any of the series. Maybe post the ending I got, yeah. But no, I mean, I'd happily. Look at how brilliant it is. Like space travel, aliens you can talk to. That's kind of explained for once. It's like being in Star Trek, but cooler in a bunch of different ways. Yeah,
I feel like there's a lot of game, although most game worlds are dystopias, there's a lot of game worlds where if you just go to a certain part of that world, if you just don't go to the front lines, it's probably fine. Yeah.
I mean, like Mass Effect is one of the interesting. Mass Effect, I'm not going to talk about for hours again, but is it explicitly until the stuff that happens in Mass Effect 1 a utopia? There's a whole plot point about how Earth is brilliant. We sorted it all out. We sorted out climate change, and we've dealt with politics and everything else. It's sort of like more of a Star Trek future for Earth, where actually after a couple of centuries of discord, we sort this shit out. And it's actually one of the reasons that humans are respected is because they've got such a brilliant homeworld.
Yay!
And I'd happily live there and go on space adventures. Yeah.
I don't even think I'd go
on
space
adventures. Can I do that instead of my job, Graham?
Yeah, this is what Adam Dawes is offering.
He'll take you there.
A one-way trip.
Done. Sold.
Opened like Elizabeth opens portals. Just rip open a hole in space-time and
He's he
tumble
asks
through.
many good questions, Adam does. He asks, you should rescue him from Colombia.
Craig Tiny? Oh, people's names.
This is why I do the...
Craig Tinney asks, what game genres would you most like to see reimagined or redesigned specifically for VR products such as the Oculus Rift? Well, first-person shooters I'm going to go for.
Yeah, I figure they don't need reimagining, though. I would like strategy games. I'd like to control strategy games, like my moving pieces around on like a war board or something, using my like actually be a commander in a
God games with that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Seeing an entire globe and just being able to kind of
manipulate it.
Yeah, this is true. What was it? Ruse, which kind of had that if you zoomed out far enough, the map turned into a war board and you could see bits of machinery around because you were just standing in the war room, essentially moving chips around. That would be really cool, wouldn't it? Okay, that's a good answer. John Lenton asks, what are your weapons of choice? Keyboard/mouse combos or gamepads taking over?
I thought he was referring to like what specific keyboards and mice and things.
Oh, really?
Oh. Well, I mean, like I use gamepads for like Dark Souls and Super Hexagon and
what type of gamepad?
Xbox controller plugged into a PC.
Yeah, I always use an Xpad controller. Controller.
An Xpad controller. As the sun sets outside the podcast studio, Graham regresses in his night form.
Where I get vowels mixed up, apparently.
I think most people are fairly omnivorous when it comes to the.
I should say.
Gone.
When
Do you mean like ambivalent or?
I do mean a word that is like that, but not ambivalent.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
What's the word? It's like
I keep thinking androgynous, but that's not the right word.
Well, most people probably are androgynous. I don't know. It's the 80s coming back again, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, most people. I think most people happily switch between controller and keyboard depending on the game.
Yeah, I should say I always use Xbox 360 controllers when I'm using a controller, but most of the time I'm on keyboard and mouse, and I don't even know what type of keyboard and mouse I use.
What do you play Dishonored with?
A keyboard and mouse.
Chris?
Keyboard and mouse.
Yeah, I think I did as well, but I can't actually remember. And I know some people who said they preferred it on a gamepad, even though usually first-person shooters come off better with a.
I thought it was perfectly fine.
I think it's something to do with the having blink as well. There's something about that which feels maybe more easier to do in quick succession.
Is it on a trigger or something?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I can't recall now. But that shows you how easy.
The only thing I changed with Dishonored is I remapped the buttons so that because previously, like left click was your right hand and right click was your left hand. Because you have powers in your left hand.
I switched that around.
Off mouse buttons, so I switched them around because then it made sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I like joypads actually feel like something. So when you're using Blink, say, it can actually be satisfying just to press the button on a controller, whereas keyboards and mice I don't find feel like anything, regardless of
anything
what.
with analog or feedback, haptic feedback is controllers are valuable for that. But not all controllers are created equal. I think the Xbox controller is superb.
Yeah, me too.
I think I need some kind of horrible, deformed velociraptor claw in order to be able to hold a PlayStation.
Yeah, I've no understood.
This is just the shit on Sony podcast.
Yeah.
We made fun of the Vita. We made fun of 4K.
We assumed that 4K was just a scam.
Criticized the PlayStation 4.
We didn't say that.
Lawyers.
Yeah. No, I mean, because I guess like I was thinking about this. The only other time, because I replayed all of Mass Effect on the PC, and it was the first time I hadn't played it using a pad. And the only thing I miss playing it on keyboard and mouse is like just being able to subtly control movement speed of a character, which I find really helps with immersion. And it is a weakness of the PC that
when you can match your walking speed to the person you're following, as opposed to being running, wait for them to catch up.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that I mean.
Racing games always play racing games with a controller.
Yeah.
Because I can't drive, and actually I find a controller. If controllers had been plugged into cars, I would have learnt to drive fucking ages ago.
Yeah. So I probably wouldn't have failed my test 4 times.
Yeah. The Ninth Life asks, the vast majority of my anticipated games for the coming year are all kickstarted. Does that mean I'm old? Love, Neil.
Depends.
And then a giant smiley face.
Oh,
Aw,
I was going
thanks,
to
Neil.
slag him off for being responsible for getting kickstarting loads of old school RPGs, but now I won't because he's such a nice man.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
That's your criteria.
I guess the reason he's worried about, because Kickstarter's obviously new, the reason he's worried about being old must be that, you know, he thinks Kickstarter is all nostalgia-based games.
That he remembers.
Lots of the month, though. There's lots of great new things coming out on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I say lots. They're, you know,
I can think of,
vanishingly small number in comparison to the number of shit old genres that should have died 10 or more years ago, but have somehow been resurrected.
Podcast pariah Marsh Davies will accept your scorn via comment, email, or Twitter.
I'm not. I had to write about quite a lot of those for the 2013 games list, and that is enough to make me hate point-and-click games forever. Even though
A very small amount of exposure is enough to achieve that, though, to be fair.
I know I have a lot of fond memories of Sam and Max, the original. But it kind of peaked there, really, and mechanically has not got any more interesting.
No, not really. Like the adventure game category in that list has been big every year,
Yeah.
But it used to be many more kind of a much more casual games, hidden object style.
Oh, yeah.
A step above hidden object on that kind of scale of crappery. So, you know, like the kind of Kickstarter stuff is better in as much as it's a...
Well, as we were saying earlier, there's a huge number of other adventure games coming out that are these guided narrative.
Coma games.
Yeah, games in which you play somebody who's in a coma.
Or might be in a coma.
There's like 5 of them on that list.
I swear there was
Coma
like
is question
3.
mark.
One that was called Coma, one that was called Sleep, another one that
called
was
Dream.
called... Yeah, it's like, God.
Being hit on the head with a heavy object.
Yeah.
That's a classic. Classic in the making.
Does this make him old? I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of many criteria that could qualify you to be old. Not knowing how old you are, however, makes it difficult to assess the others.
Some of the games I'm looking forward to this year are Kickstarter games. The problem is that I don't expect them to actually come out this year. They're all kind of scheduled for August, say, like Planetary Annihilation or Project Eternity. And
I think we might get to play them this year in some sort of like
some
trial
sort of
alpha format.
Yeah. But really, they're next year. Angus Morrison asks, some recent releases boast truly phenomenal acting. Do you think there's still a place in games for silent protagonists?
Interesting question.
I think there is also, but it's interesting because I used to be diehard silent protagonist fan, and then there's a couple of games recently that have kind of won me over to. Actually, I really quite like when they talk. Like, I like that Jason Brody talks in Far Cry 3. I think it makes him more interesting as a character. And, you know, I'm pretty sure the reasons I hate him are the reasons I'm supposed to hate him. I like that Adam Jensen talks in Deus Ex. You know,
And he's such a grumpy fuck.
Whereas Dishonored guy doesn't ever talk, does he?
He has lines of dialogue you can choose for him that express what he says.
Yeah, but he doesn't voice them, does he? No, which is slightly strange.
Yeah, I think it depends very much on the relationship that your protagonist has with any kind of narrative. Because often the narrative seems to make demands of you, which would be normally best reacted to via speech. And so when that isn't provided, that feels jarring to me still. But at the same time, I'm sure there's plenty of other games which that is not necessary, and you can get away with having a silent protagonist. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I'd be very surprised if silent protagonist Gordon Freeman has any kind of lines in whatever game they make next in a Half-Life.
I doubt he would.
No, I feel like they've kind of they've committed to that now.
But it's like that
Will
thing
it
they
feel
said. Well, it's like
creepy
the thing
or
they
not?
said when they gave the original ending for Portal 2 didn't work. Do you know what that was?
No?
There's the joke. The original ending for Portal 2, or one of them, they came with so many iterations, was it turning out that you could disable GLaDOS, who was still the villain at that point, with a voice command. And the joke then being that Chell's been a silent protagonist this whole time, but the gag is GLaDOS is voice operated.
Right. That's a good joke.
Yeah, it is a good joke. And the ending was you just pressing spacebar to get Chell to go stop or something. But the problem is no one understood it because they never heard her voice before. So they had no idea who was talking. Because there's no way of... You can't see the character, so you can't see their lips move or any of the other ways to indicate it. So...
See, I don't think it matters very much in Portal that you're a silent protagonist because nothing's ever asked of you as a character. I mean, GLaDOS is telling you to do things, but she's not trying to have a conversation with you. Whereas plenty of people in Half-Life 2 do try and have a conversation with you, and they say, oh, you're not the talking type, or you're the silent type.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah, the creepily stacking boxes in the corner while I'm trying to talk to you type. That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the first Half-Life, I think it made more sense, where there wasn't kind of... You just went up and pressed E on people and they would jabber. There wasn't actual conversation. and it kind of did make you feel more embodied in that character by not having a jarring voice or anything like that. But I think in Half-Life 2, when people say things to me, if this was me, I would respond. And so it doesn't make the character feel like me.
You can achieve this in the comfort of your own home by simply speaking at your monitor.
Yeah, I think that probably does work to some extent.
Yeah, like, hello. Hi, Mr. Freeman. Hello. Nattering away merrily to yourself. Oh, you're speaking over me quite a lot.
But then when Alex says, you're kind of the silent type, you're like, no, I'm not. I'm talking here all the time. You're just not listening.
Talking to Alex
God.
endlessly as you walk around the levels like, I sometimes worry about,
hey, what's this weird thing? Picks it up, throws it down on the ground. Oh, sorry.
I'm playing with the seesaw now. That's maybe why Gordon Freeman doesn't talk. Like, do you think physics?
it'll become, that thing will become increasingly dissonant, though, won't it? In games of the future.
I don't know, because for me, it depends on the nature of the relationship between the player and the character they're controlling. Like, if I really like games where everyone who you're speaking to is voiced, but you just choose the dialogue for your character without hearing it, because then you can do your own readings of those lines without necessarily kind of gambling on the voice actor saying it with the intonation that you had in mind when you picked it. Like Dragon Age Origins is a good example of that. Like I think the problem that's crept in since everyone is a voice protagonist, or you pick these digest forms of the lines and hear the actual line, is the thing that happens occasionally. The classic issue of I didn't know that was going to be flirty, or you pick the line that looks reasonable, but then the person sounds fucking mental. Like the Alpha Protocol issue of the LA Noire is the LA Noire problem of I am reasonable human being 2/3 of the time, but if you pick the anger button, I turn into a fucking maniac. And that's the discrepancy.
Well, I mean, it's the Mass Effect 1 thing of, I've had enough of your questions. I select that option because I'm bored of this, and then he just punches the reporter in the face. That was why that became such a...
I kind of like that in Mass Effect. I
think it works if you do it once. If it's just a general shunkiness to your game.
Yeah. I think it's nice to have a certain level of ambiguity about your choices, because you feel more like you're poking this shepherd creature who may react.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's the nature of the relationship. Then you're goading him, or you're his director off camera.
Improvisational, and you're discovering the character as you go along in partnership with the game, rather than it being something which
Which is the argument we've made before.
Whereas Phelps, because you were picking things that were really kind of were meant to be mechanically vital to the investigation, it felt very annoying when he would, decide to berate a rape victim for no real good reason. You'd be like, it's steady.
It's you should be able to you should play in LA Noire. You should play as basically the cameraman. So you're playing a character who's walking around following Phelps, and then you have the ability to put a hand out that comes out in the first person and just pulls him back. No, stop that.
There is a PlayStation 2 game where you play a cameraman. What's it? Michigan Town, Michigan City, Michigan Lake, Michigan Report.
Chicago.
Michigan, Chicago.
No, Lake Michigan. Yeah. Sorry.
It's a Japanese game where you play a cameraman following around a news reporter as mutants start to attack this town. And you're going around and reporting on the events and filming things, and you get different ratings for how good your shots are.
Oh.
And you can then kind of interfere with the world in ways. So, typical example, your reporter lady is kind of walking backwards, talking to cameras. You follow her, and you see that she's about to trip over something. You can either say, stop her and help her, or you can let her fall down and film that. And you then get those sorts of scenes all throughout the game where you can choose to save someone's life and not get that great shot but be a good person, or you can let them get run over by a train and just film it and get a really great shot, and then have the other characters kind of hate you for it, but you're getting rewarded in other ways. And the other thing you can do is you can get your reporter killed within about 30 minutes of playing the game. You can have your reporter just be eaten by a mutant because you didn't stop what was happening. So you just filmed it, and then you get another reporter assigned to you because you still got to go out and report on the story, and the story then branches in these completely different ways, and it's completely broken. It's made by Suda51.
Oh really?
Yeah, I think it's. I think it's.
Awesome.
Is it Grasshopper?
Grasshopper.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was them. them that did it.
Makers of lots of very weird games, weird
Yeah.
and sadistic towards the player as well.
But yeah, it's a really interesting game. I can't really remember how we got onto talking about that now. Yeah, silent protagonists say.
They're okay
Moving
by
on.
me.
James Vokes asks, favorite gadget/tech from CES?
Steve Ballmer. Moving on.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
Craig McCormick, no relation, asks, are any of you comic book fans? If so, try not to have a Marvel versus DC war. DC has
Okay.
Batman, Marvel has Iron Man. Both rule.
Agreed.
Yep.
We'll endeavour not to have a comic war.
I think Marvel has lacked good games. This is the thing that made me think recently. There hasn't been a good Marvel Lego.
I mean, with the exception of Rocksteady's Batman games, there haven't been any good DC games. I mean, the Superman games are famously rubbish.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose it's DC Universe Online, which has its fans.
The Hulk game had its appeals back in like
Spider-Man 2 was pretty good.
2004 or something. But no, there's never really been...
I thought it was a huge shame they never made that Avengers game that was like Left 4 Dead. That they released that spec footage for, where it's like each player is like either Thor or Captain America or Iron Man or Hulk.
What was the...
Kieran Gillen needs to make a phonogram game, which is a karaoke game.
I went out for lunch once with Jordan Thomas, who was lead designer in Bioshock 2, and he was talking about his design for a phonogram game.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He just liked the
That would be
comics,
awesome.
and he'd just been thinking about it for fun.
Yeah.
He'd actually
Well,
come
we had
up
this
with a
conversation last night in the pub about how if I worked for Harmonix, the Rock Band campaign I would make would be Mass Effect plus Rock Band. So, it's, I mean, actual like band relationships and hiring people and getting this band together, and then the action sequences are playing songs and how well you perform with those relationships and things. And that's,
There's
I want to play that.
the
Yeah, me too.
Cliff Harris game Kudos, which is you're forming a band and buying posters and trying to get more popular, and it doesn't have the kind of Rock Band action sequences, but it's got all the life sim management stuff around that. So,
Yeah.
you could just play a bit of Kudos and then play a bit of Rock Band and then keep walking back and forth between your Xbox and your PC.
Yeah, I could do that.
I'm a comic book fan, but I have no particular opinions about Marvel or DC.
When I was buying comic books regularly, I bought more Marvel than DC, but that's because DC's control of their franchises is all kinds of whack.
I hear bad things about the new 52, but we should move on.
Yeah.
Because this is a whole other podcast. Dusty Gherkin asks, after Tom's rather spectacular entry into game making, he's not even released it yet. Are any other PCGers thinking of doing the same?
Already have.
Martin? Kinda?
Yeah, I've done illustrations for games that have been released,
That's true.
and some that have yet to come out.
Well, with my lack of relevant talent, I probably won't.
I play around occasionally in Game Maker and other bits of software that makes a lack of talent less important.
Yeah, I might try and... I did used to try and learn Game Maker. I can do little pixel men. I mean...
Problem is, we don't really know any that many coders. Well, there's like a massive glut of talent in certain areas. at
Writing
our
being-
magazine,
yeah.
writing being one common element. But Tom Senior can draw.
He
like
can do music, he can...
Yeah,
Tony can code. Tony's a good coder.
Yeah,
He knows C++.
We
doesn't
should
want to
just
make
go
games with
pirate
me
and
though.
make-
I want to make games with people.
Make a game studio.
I need collaborators. I need coders. That's what I need. All of those.
You don't need a coder if you just use Game Maker, and you can probably learn Game Maker to a degree where you can start making your game very
Or
quickly.
Unity.
Yeah.
And then by the time you're done making your game, you will know how to use Game Maker.
I already have enough talents that I'm mediocre at without adding to that pile. I should just get good at those ones.
But again, like you can, because you can do writing and you can do art, but if you can do a little bit of Game Maker programming, you've got a complete set with which you can make a game.
You're then balanced. Yeah.
You've convinced me.
You can make a mediocre game.
Yeah. I'll make a mediocre game that won't get greenlit. Yay.
I would like to make a game at some point. But I have many delusions. Draco Silver asks, favorite video game characters of... Okay, I'm going to favorite videos game character of 2012, and which character are you most excited to meet in 2013?
Of 20, I'm not quite sure whether this game came out in 2012, but one of the only redeeming features of the Game of Thrones game was that it had some interesting characters in it, presumably because George R. R. Martin had helped write it. But the voice acting in that game is utterly appalling. But you have one of the two protagonists that you play. It's a guy called Moors, and he's this hulking brute of the Night's Watch. And he's just the most kind of unflinching dogmatist. And neither of these two characters are really likable in any way. But they are. That's what you've got. That's the kind of imperfect world of Game of Thrones. And he is quite interesting, and the choices that you make from him are quite interesting. And his counterpart, which is the other character you play, is this slippery guy called Alistair, who is this pious dude who suddenly found that fire religion. I forget what it's called in the mythology. But you can kind of choose where you go with him. So you can turn him into this kind of haughty lordling, or he can be this kind of man of the people. But it's all of you never get the sense that he's really genuine in any of these beliefs, and actually he's quite manipulative. And those are very interesting characters, albeit in a totally shit game with terrible voice acting.
Should people play this game?
No.
Should people watch a YouTube video of someone else playing this game?
Well,
in order to experience the characters.
If somebody would do
someone
the
watch
service
a mashup of the cutscenes from this game?
Somebody should transcribe the cutscenes, and then you should read that.
Okay, fair enough.
The safest form to accept that in.
Yeah. As for 2013, Elizabeth from Bioshock is on this one.
Yeah.
The characters from Iconoclast, which is a side-scrolling platformer by Joachim Sandberg.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as Konjac, which is a really fun side-scrolling platformer, possibly to be released next year. But it's got some very, very interesting characters in it.
Chris?
Characters from... I mean, I could answer this question at length and seriously with talking about RPGs and things, but actually I think my character from 2012 is going to be the guy who's better than you at XCOM in XCOM. You know, the base commander guy who at the start, like that guy who probably should be running these missions, but is like...
so bland.
Yeah,
he's not a great character.
Oh,
he's
by no
competent
means.
at
By
his
no
job.
means, but I think I probably owe him a drink at this point.
You imagining some extra inner life that he has, where he's...
Well, no, but he's kind of so he's recruited this invisible flying commander that floats around the outside of the base, whose terrible orders he then has to execute, despite doing a decent job himself by all accounts in the opening mission when he's telling said commander how to control dudes. Yeah, I think that guy gets the short end of the stick, I think. Or maybe him, or maybe I don't have a face in the dark UN man. The commander.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I thought about saying him as well.
XCOM's equivalent of Ban Ki-moon.
I was either going to say him or the triangle in Super Hexagon. It's not my favourite character, because I can't think of who my favourite character would be, but I was very surprised by Vass in Far Cry, because I really thought he was going to be utter shit, and I was going to hate him and be really super annoyed by him, based on the trailers that they put out, which were... have I ever told you the definition of insanity? And then repeating that line twice more, which I remember from the playground. That's that level of sophistication. But actually, no, he was really well acted, really well voice acted, and he was a good character.
Yeah. Wish he was used more.
Yeah, me too.
Next year?
Although there are a lot of good characters in the game. I liked the German guy you meet later on as well. Which was fun.
Sam.
Yeah.
Next year, probably Elizabeth from Bioshock Infinite. Less to do with her personality, of which I know almost nothing, and more just the kind of AI stuff that Irrational are trying to do with it. I think she's the most interesting use of a character in terms of trying to tie it in with mechanics.
That we know of so far.
I know both of you are chomping at the bit to see the new Lara Croft, and I only said that so I could see Chris's pain face.
What other kind of games of that sort are coming out next year? I mean, there's Metro, but then we don't know a great deal about its characters, and then
there's a lot of recurring characters as well.
Prophet from Crisis 3.
God, they can't even figure out which Prophet it is. There's two now.
Yeah, but one
There's
of
one
them's
spelled with an
inside
FIT.
the other one, and it's always confusing.
There's so many mean jokes. We're not going
No, let's not go there.
Julius asks, how could Don't Starve improve for the impending release? Well, first of all, they have to explain to me what Don't Starve is, because I haven't heard of that.
game.
It's a kind of survival game, isn't it?
Yep.
I think.
Well,
I
it
don't
sounds
know
like one.
really much about it, I'm afraid.
I
Sorry.
haven't played it yet. I've heard reasonably good things. It's basically like a roguelike about not starving, I think.
Is it in like open beta or
I think it's on
something?
Steam.
Because it says impending release. How could it improve for the impending release?
Pass.
Drew Bailey asks, what are your thoughts on the utility of the NVIDIA Shield when a wireless controller and HDMI cable can do essentially the same? We pretty much covered that.
Yeah.
We're kind of down on the
Yeah.
NVIDIA Shield.
Seems like a lot of money and proprietary tech for an experience you'll have twice.
Comparable to the PSP Vita, I believe, was our condemnation. Lee Cody asks, Guild Wars 2, can we see ArenaNet keeping this much content coming, or will dry up as the year advances?
That's obviously beyond anyone's power to say, but the answer I would give to this is the boring business answer. The I think maybe I've even said this on the podcast before, but like the pipeline that they have for Guild Wars is really smart compared to almost any other MMO I can think of. Like, they're not dependent on vast amounts of voice acting or anything else because of the way their systems work. And having seen their mission design tools used, they've made it as easy as possible to create new stuff. And a big part of that is the way the world works. So, like in World of Warcraft, if you want to add a new quest, you probably have to move an existing quest because every area of the world is used and used permanently for one thing. Phasing can help with that, but in Guild Wars, the vast majority of content is actually based on timers. So this wave of enemies might spawn at this sort of kind of interval, and then we'll run and attack this village.
It's similar to what Rift did, and Rift has also been very good at putting out regular content updates.
And so this means that if they want to add a new thing to a zone, all they really have to do is say, giant wolf, 10% chance every 20 minutes, done. And then that content is then in the game. And it doesn't really matter if it clashes with something else, because that's then interesting that you get the centaur attack and the new giant wolf at the same time.
There's lots of stuff going on with PvP, right? Isn't there? I think that was
They were adding new maps at a fairly decent clip. And there's I think they're building out the esports side of it. That seems like it's kind of a different part. Like, if he's referring to the big seasonal events, then I mean, their stated intent is that there will be some big thing in Guild Wars every month. Like, the only month they haven't done that for is September. Game came out in August. September was just the game being out.
Yeah.
Then they had Halloween, then the big invasion event in November, then Christmas. And so I don't know what they're doing in January. And it may end up being like 3 months on, 1 month off, 3 months on, 1 month off, but that's still really good for MMO. So,
and I imagine at some point they'll do with what they did with the other Guild Wars games, and then they'll release an expansion for it.
I think that's always the plan. Like, I think if any company was going to pull it off, it would be ArenaNet because they've given themselves the tools to do it. But yeah, there you go.
Eric Goldberg asks, has vanilla Minecraft passed its expiration date? It seems like mods are the big thing nowadays. No, I don't think so at all. I think, well, I mean, what did it sell? 275,000 copies or something like that over Christmas?
I think it's just under half a million.
Okay.
On all platforms.
That's how much it made in terms of money, or
No,
that's how many it sold.
I think it's the copies sold, something like 450,000.
Yeah, so vanilla Minecraft is still going strong and will continue to be discovered by more people than we knew existed for months and months to come. I mean, and the majority of them will never install a mod.
Well, the majority of those sales are on mobile.
Oh, that's interesting.
More than all the other platforms put together, in fact. So actually, Minecraft is now really predominantly a mobile game, not a PC game at all.
Wow. Don't say that out loud. It's ours.
Yep. But I mean, actually, I did play Minecraft for the first time with Tekkit, and that stuff installed quite recently, and it was very easy to get up and running. Like, you just downloaded you didn't even have to install Minecraft. Like, you just downloaded the Tekkit launcher, entered your Minecraft login details, and it pulled down the right Minecraft build and installed it all and got straight up. So there might be people starting playing the game for the first time, like, because that was someone saying, "I want to show you the cool reactor I've built with my Tekkit server," and yeah, it's super easy to game.
It's also just, it's the narrative of a game and the way it gets written and talked about is that, of course, 3 years after it first came out, most people are going to be talking and writing about the mods rather than writing and talking about the vanilla. But people will still be playing the vanilla. You're just not hearing about them as much. Philly asks,
The next two are kind of similar. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Philly asks, Chris was gesturing there and I didn't know what it meant. Philly asks, favourite snow-based game given the weather at the minute? And David MN asks, it's snowing quite a bit in Sheffield, which makes me wonder, what is your favourite implementation of snow in a game? So let's start at the beginning. Favourite snow-based game? Chris.
Ski free.
Martin.
Cryostasis.
Okay, those are good answers. Let's expand on those. Chris, why ski free? Or was that a flippant answer?
That's a genuinely. I was thinking about this because I couldn't really think of any I can think of games that have cool snow in them, but best running through snow. Maybe Assassin's Creed 3 has good crunchy, slow you down snow running. But ski free has a Yeti that comes out of nowhere and kills you. And that is the defining horror gaming experience of my childhood. So I'm going to give it ski free.
Interesting fact.
Yeah.
Owen
Amnesia,
Hill,
basically.
former web editor, he's near phobic of the noise of people crunching snow. He hates it. He hates that noise.
Really? It's a
Wow.
lovely noise.
He hates it. He hates the squeakiness of it.
He lives in Sweden now.
I know. He's kind of shot himself in the foot there. Really.
So why cryostasis? Which is a shit game, if I remember correctly.
Not if you read my excellent reinstall of it fairly recently.
But I do also recall it having interesting things, which you expounded upon.
Yeah,
very
no,
well.
it's very good. Well, it's not very good. I know I said that. It's quite shonky in a lot of ways, but it's extremely cold. That's the one thing you can say. It's a horror game set on an icebreaker that has fallen out of time or some mad shit has happened.
He's
to it.
in a coma.
It's in a coma. No, it's not quite clear. In fact, it doesn't really make any sense when you get to the end. But throughout, it's just the kind of health mechanic is heat in that game, and you have to run between heat sources essentially before you freeze to death. And everything is just encased in all these kind of fronds of frost. And when you turn on something to heat up a room, the walls kind of trickle with water, and it's extremely effective at creating a sense of cold.
Good
Really
answer.
good.
My answer for favourite snow-based game is not a PC game. It's SSX, specifically SSX 3 on the GameCube. Because it was a snowboarding game, whereas you unlocked all the tracks, they all chained together until you could eventually ride from the very top of the mountain to the very bottom as a single continuous run, which would take you about 35 minutes. And so you had this enormous downhill skiing experience with avalanches and ice caves and stuff like that, and it was great fun.
Awesome.
Favorite implementation of snow in a game, I don't really know. But the snow in Assassin's Creed 3 looked nice in videos. So I'll
It did
go
look
with that.
nice. When you were running through it and people were kind of struggling to run, it was a bit like they were struggling to run in snow. Good job, mocap team. You decide.
Ask me again in a few months, and I shall say Company of Heroes 2, for it will be the only game I can think of at that point that has snow in it. Dante asks, will we ever see a return to open world games that actually feel alive instead of suffering from empty worlds Bethesditis? Well, first of all, I don't agree with the premise of your question. I think we've had many open world games that actually feel alive in recent years, and I think Bethesda have made some of those games. I think Skyrim does feel alive.
Yeah, I think it's the part of the question I don't agree with, Graham, is I can't think of older open world games that necessarily feel more alive than open world games do now. It's always been the trade-off with open world games is maybe if you want to look at the history of the Grand Theft Auto series, that's only succeeded more and more in giving pedestrians more interesting behaviours and more interesting ways of interacting with the world. I think there's Skyrim worked pretty hard to find random things that could happen in the wilderness and create more of them. And the whole dragon attack thing is a way of trying to add stuff that can happen anywhere in the world. That
I'd be interested to know what his examples of games that do feel like that are. Because I don't. I'm with you guys. I don't really think that Bethesda's games do feel especially lifeless. It does feel constructed for the player. Like, I don't really get a sense that those worlds exist independently of my place in them.
No.
Whereas I think, but maybe something like Dark Souls, which isn't necessarily exactly an open world game, but it's big, and that does feel like that. Yeah, that universe
Stalker
is
might be an example.
trundling on behind you. Yeah, Stalker definitely.
exists without you because it can squash you like a bug at any moment it wants, really, on the hardest, I think. So,
And then if any of those spiritual successors to Stalker games, of which there are several, come
Spirit's
out,
successor to Stalker.
yeah, if any of them come out at all, then maybe they will recapture that light and
Yeah,
mystery.
again, it depends entirely on the value parameters you're establishing.
My only concern with something like Skyrim is that it feels like you're depleting that world as you complete it.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of quests where, oh, this character's really interesting. I really like this character. Oh, this character has finished with me now. And now when I talk to her or him, she or he only has 2 lines of dialogue.
Yeah,
and
the
it
end
doesn't acknowledge what I just did for this person at all.
Well, like having now finished Skyrim, like the main quest line, it suffers hugely from that. Like I they added a new line to guards who are like, "Hey, you're great," and then bye, and then enchanter, enchant me up a bed or whatever, like and then go back to the same things they always have, But the thing is that even the few lines they do give some key characters that you can go and talk to them, they sound so bored that they're almost like they're totally deeply unimpressed with the thing you've done. Like you can go back and talk to the Greybeards and then they're like, hello, Dragonborn. Yep. Good work. On you go. And the whole thing feels so drab and flat that it kind of turned me off the game. I thought, I feel done with this now. Like even though there's a vast amount of caves to go exploring, and now I've lost the pull of something to do in the world. I mean, so that does feel a little bit dead now because... I mean, I do wish they would sort their shit out with regards to actually telling a story that doesn't either compromise or isn't compromised by the game they're making.
I had a similar thing in Far Cry 3 where I kind of thought while I was playing it and doing the story, man, the story is rubbish. I just want to do the outposts. I just want the game which is infinite outposts. I completed the game having 3 outposts left to do, and I haven't done those outposts.
Yeah,
because I've just lost all motivation now that the actual plot thread that was pulling me through is
the
done.
Ending of Far Cry will do that to you, though, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true. It was constructed in a very particular way to make that happen. But
Yeah. Good. At least we got a quota for jabbing Far Cry in the ribs in a space knife fight.
yeah, that game I really like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Dante, we don't really agree with any part of your question.
We're sorry. Thank you for writing.
Yeah. And that's all the Twitter questions we have time for today, I'm afraid, children.
Oh.
What now?
I think we have to end the podcast.
It does seem like that's the time it's come to.
Oh, God, and there's still 29 minutes left of work.
No, 19 minutes left.
That's better.
And if
That
we
is
walk
bad.
really slowly, then
Yep. Well, we'll call it a day. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.